Welcome to the introduction lesson of Baseball for the Blind. I'm Stefano Malaguti, Secretary General of the Italian Baseball League for the Blind and a coach, as well as an ex-player for Fortitudo Montenegro in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I have been part of Baseball for the Blind from the beginning. That is, from the time Alfredo Melli called and invited me to the ballpark at Casalecchio to see what he was involved with. It's been almost 30 years since then. In this first part, we'll talk about the origins of the game and of the benefits it provides to the athletes with their own testimonials. Then we will talk about the rules and specifically how it works to run the bases. Before we start, let us talk about the history of the game. Alfredo Melli was the founder of the game. He was a former Italian baseball champion and former player for Fortitudo Bologna in the Italian Baseball League. He is the only Italian to have won the national championship as a coach, manager, and general manager. He had a lot of blind friends who loved baseball, and the question was once asked, how can the blind also participate in this great game? From this point, he started to adapt the game by inventing the rules with the help of Mr. Calzodari, and acquired all the necessary equipment to play the game in a safe way. Alfredo once wrote the following in a letter: "In baseball for the blind, you hit the ball. You run the bases, you field the ball, and you throw the ball. You play defense as the offensive team hits. The game is fun, and there is competition to win." Those who are unaware of the game are always amazed at how it's been adapted for the blind, emphasizing the concept of inclusion for everyone. The visually impaired who play baseball will find many benefits on a physical, social, and emotional level. You can see physical and mental improvements amongst athletes, skill development in previously neglected physical ability, and the refinement of hearing as a tool for orientation and movement and spatial awareness. The game also acts as a form of psychological rehabilitation, with important benefits for self-sufficiency. Playing this game will help in the strengthening of self-esteem and confidence in self, and serve as a way for the visually impaired to feel free from their former restrictions. Our game also builds interpersonal friendships thanks to the lack of limitations on age, gender, or nationality. Now, let's hear directly from our players. What does it mean for a blind person to play baseball?
I started playing baseball for the blind more or less 20 years ago, and I started thanks to a teacher I had in middle school. It was in the beginning of 1999, and she told me about this great sport. As soon as she told me about it, I wanted to be involved. As soon as I started playing, I knew I would keep this passion alive. What I like the most is the development of physical skills, playing defense, base running, moving freely around the field, and not being afraid of running into anything, as it is very safe. In my opinion, because I started playing this game at such a young age, it really impacted my development and self-sufficiency as the adult I am today. It helped with my spatial awareness because I'm never afraid to move around in open spaces. I learned to pick up the sounds of the bases, the ball, and other sounds. That helped build my orientation ability. So in my opinion, certainly a little boy who is visually impaired can gain a lot from this sport. It has not only helped me from a standpoint of athleticism, but also in life in general.
I also really enjoy the element of team building and having to work together to achieve a goal, which creates a very social atmosphere. We are all one, working together, and feel that we are a part of something special. Hello, everybody. I'm Matteo, number 19 of Lampi Milano. I have played baseball for 9 years. I was introduced to this sport from a former member of the team and current general manager, as well as the captain of my current team. This sport has always fascinated me and given me a lot of excitement. There are many aspects of the game that I love. These include the ability to participate in a sport with rules, a regular season, the possibility of winning championships, and everything that goes into being a real organized sport. Above all, this sport allows you to have fun while strengthening your auditory ability and builds your spatial awareness through your proximity to your teammates, assistants, and coaches. As such, playing this game has given me more trust in my ability to do once difficult things with more regularity in other areas of my life. Specifically, building my self confidence and being ability to move around and trusting the sight that I have to do things around me.
Ciao a tutti, sono Casale Gaetano, giocatore di baseball per non vedenti e ipovedenti. Gioco per
Hello, everybody. My name is Gaetano. I play for I Patrini Malnate, which is an association in Varese. I've been playing the sport since 2016, once I lost my vision. It was suggested that I try playing this sport, and the Varese Sports and Adriano Chiesa introduced me to this great game.
dai cicli sportivi varesini, ai tempi avevano organizzato una giornata di bowling e lì ho incontrato il coach Adriano Chiesa che mi ha proposto appunto questo sport.
I was a little hesitant at first, but when I tried it on the field, I fell in love right away. It completely changed my life on a personal level. I had the opportunity to have some great experiences from this sport. I made a lot of friends and was able to share these moments with others.
Anche a livello personale ho avuto modo di avere delle belle soddisfazioni che mi ha dato questo sport, ho avuto modo di conoscere e di condividere il campo con tanti altri giocatori e quindi anche a livello umano è stato bellissimo ed è bellissimo tuttora. E,
I tried other sports, but what baseball provided me, other sports could not. What I liked most about the game is that in the field we are free to move around and express ourselves without fear of getting hurt. We could run, dive, and do a lot of fun things. This extends to off the field as well.
con la corsa, con i tuffi, senza paura di farsi male, condividiamo tante cose in campo e fuori dal campo.
Hello, I'm Saladu Dayan. I'm 17 years old. I play baseball for Leonessa for the past 2 years. I learned about this sport from an organization that did a demonstration at my school. I decided to try the sport and loved it. I enrolled right away. What I like most is that I feel united with my teammates. We all understand each other and we are a family on and off the field. We have a lot of fun together on the road in practices and other areas. Hello, I'm Emmanuel Spiga. I play for third post baseball. My brother introduced me to this sport, and I started by fielding ground balls. I quickly got hooked. I decided to keep playing. There are a lot of things I like, but particularly I feel that running freely despite being blind is a beautiful concept. Without anyone's help, I feel totally free on the field. Playing on this team helped give me the tools to work well with others. The equipment necessary to play baseball for the blind include the ball, a glove, a bat, a mask, paddles, and bases. The ball is a normal rubber ball with 6 holes on the surface and 2 nickel-plated brass rattles, which help the players locate the ball. The gloves and bats are the same as used in baseball or in softball. The masks are like those that skiers wear, with a foam-lined interior. The international rules of the sport require players to wear masks to distinguish blind from visually impaired players, as well as serve as a source of protection. The mask is created and distributed by Baseball for the Blind. The paddles are used by the second and third base attendants. They are hit together to make a sound that helps guide the base runner. The assistants use these paddles to help the base runners locate the bases. The internal sound of the paddle helps all players distinguish where they are currently located on the field. First base is flat and flush with the ground in a way that the players never stumble and do not fall while turning for second base. An electric box which gives off sounds is found underneath the base and helps the players orient themselves throughout their base running. The umpire uses a remote control to turn the horn sound on right after contact is made and turns it off once the runner is past first base and is making his way to second base. The flat bases are used at second and third to help players avoid stumbling as well. A second baseman who is not blind will use the same base as used in baseball. It is possible to use Braille tactile maps, which familiarize a player by using the touch of their hand. These maps identify where the field of play and where the defensive team would be playing. When a player is trying to play this game for the first time, these tactile maps help a lot. The black and white parts help identify the playing field. There are 2 types of tactile maps, one with the field and the other in the way the defense is playing. Each team is made of 5 blind players, 1 player who is not blind and 1 assistant. The player who is not blind and the assistant will help his teammates at playing defense at second and third base. There are 5 umpires on the field and 3 assistants to help the offensive team. On defense, there are 5 blind players, the sighted player at second base and the assistant on the mound. The ball used has 6 holes on its surface and contains 2 nickel-plated brass rattles so that players can detect it while on defense. The batter will throw the ball up in the air and attempt to hit the ball. It will be judged as fair if it passes the string that starts from the lower left corner of second base and connects third base, and must bounce at least once before this line. The batter-runner can try to reach second base by touching or running around the right side of second base.
Sarà salvo se toccherà la seconda base prima dell'arrivo del tiro del difensore cieco al difensore vedente posizionato sulla seconda base difensiva.
The batter runner will be safe if he or she reaches second base before the throw from the defender or the sided defender positioned at second base. The batter will have 3 attempts to hit a fair ball, and if he or she fails at this because of swinging and missing or hitting a foul ball, they'll be eliminated by strikeout. Arriving at third base means that the next base hit will result in a run scored for the offensive team. The runners can leave the base only after the umpire calls fair ball. This signals that the ball hit past the string as previously mentioned. Arriving at second or third base safely requires contact with the base runner's body and the base, but the runner does not have to maintain this contact. The batter runner and any other runner may advance to the next base only if the throw made to the sided player is not caught and does not result in an out. The time it takes for the ball to return to the sided second baseman is the time allowed for base runners to attempt to obtain that extra base. Scoring a run is done by reaching the area marked off at home plate. If the ball hit exceeds 68.60 meters, it will be considered a home run. If a sided defender is able to catch a ball thrown to him or her without losing contact with second base, then he or she has the possibility to get a batter runner out. Any out made at second results in the ball being ruled dead, and all the other runners must return to their original base. Anytime a fly ball is hit and surpasses the 68.60 meter mark, the batter is ruled out for safety reasons. All other players are required to return to their previous base. The ball is considered dead at this point. Games are 7 or 9 innings long. The first thing people ask are these people really blind? How can they play without seeing the ball? How are they able to hit? After practicing for a long time, baseball for the blind players become competent in their skills, just as regular baseball players are able to do so. Coaching is done with the same approach as in baseball and includes the building of those same necessary skills to hit, field, throw, and run. It's not very easy to do, but over time, a lot of these players become quite competent in these skills. After a spectator sees the game, they will eventually say, "Wow, this is baseball!" It is important for coaches to remember their important role in ensuring the safety of all the players. Treating the disabled with the same level of respect as in any other sporting endeavor is of the utmost importance. Coaches who are working with these players need to be aware of the athlete's desire to be treated as equals. There should be no demeaning tone in the words chosen, but at the same time, coaches must be aware that players want to be spoken to with the same language as used for other athletes. You must be patient and explain things carefully, especially since most of them have never played this game before, and possibly no other sport at all before this. You are taking on the responsibility of helping them move on the field and following these sounds, which they've never heard before, something that can be very intimidating. Coaches must also be aware that there are a lot of different skill levels of players. The next video will show an example of what players experience when they try this great sport for the first time. This video features children from age 9 to 14 from the Bologna Institute for the Visually Impaired.
Questo lavoro è stato fatto con ragazzi e ragazze dai 9-14 anni in un campo estivo di alcuni istituti per ciechi di ipovedenti. Noterete la differenza di esecuzione dei gesti tra chi ha giocato altri sport e chi ha provato a farlo per la prima volta.
Notice the difference between those who've played other sports and those who've never tried playing any sport before. What becomes extremely important is the amount of support and inspiration given to the players. The goal is to encourage them to give the sport a real chance, based on the significant positive impact it could make on their lives. This is part of our mission. Some of the comments from children included, "I always liked baseball. Baseball consists of fielding baseballs. These bats are quite heavy. You leave from here. This is home plate. Every team has 9 turns on attack and on defense."
Mentre correvamo c'era un suono.
Il suono se lo lascia sulla sinistra e inizia a...
We had to run the bases. While we ran, there were sounds that guided us. This was a beautiful experience. It was difficult for the first time, and I had to learn how to use the sounds to guide me. It was great to be able to try this game. It was a strange experience, especially for the first time. Eventually, I got better at what I had to do.
Io penso, e questo lo dico perché lo credo e perché l'ho visto, è uno dei pochi sport che i disabili visivi possono fare. Vi siete accorti che siete liberi di correre?
The coach said, "I believe this is a great sport for you to try and get better at. I saw a lot of people who were very scared at first, but after a couple of years, they've become very good. We are very thankful for this opportunity. Thank you to everybody for your participation in making this event a special one." The children who play this game will develop a lot of skills and eventually develop a base athleticism that, if not already present, can be very valuable. As a coach, it needs to be anticipated that you will be training players who've never played baseball nor ever watched it before. Encourage players to pay attention to the voices of the coaches and build a familiarity with the different sounds that can help them on the field. In order for players to be successful, the right muscles need to be developed with specific training. Teach players how to use the tactile maps so that step by step they can understand the obstacles they will encounter as they run the bases and when they're on defense. This includes the positioning of the stands as well as the outline of the bases. This will help them when it comes time to play the game.
E di percorsi che dovranno seguire per allenarsi e giocare le partite.
It is incredibly important for coaches to build personalized practice plans for the players based on the requirements of the game. These include base running, sliding, fielding, and throwing, and above all, hitting. All of them will need to be built into practice plans. Do not deprive players of the chance to play actual games, and start by playing segments of games in order to keep the work fun. Develop the skills slowly but purposefully. If they are going to continue playing this game with the expectation of getting better, there needs to be emphasis placed on building group, individual, and game-type practice plans. Practices can be divided into descriptive examples of what needs to be done, like a theoretical approach, as well as the practice itself, which would be the practical application. Let us speak about the instruction itself. The technical skills that need to be developed will follow two fundamental phases: the description of the game's requirements and the examples of these requirements. Describing the parts in succession that make up the movements required to play this game will contribute to motor skills that can facilitate an individual's development. If a player has acquired certain skills from other experiences, their learning will be expedited. On the other hand, if a player lacks the skills, a coach must be more aware of how they can be developed. Coaches need to come up with a personalized approach based on the player they are coaching, including ways that they can be tested as the skills develop. An example could be a coach who guides his players' gestures, or a player becoming aware of the gestures they need to make in order to perform a skill by physically observing the coach. Another example is a coach who guides the movements of his players with his own cues. Teaching these skills is preferably done in a one-on-one method. The maximum should be one coach for two athletes in the teaching of skills. In the following slides, you will see more examples of passive and active coaching styles. In this video, we have an example of a passive coaching style. You can see how coaches assume postures required for specific skills, with players touching the coach who's simulating the movement. From this, the player will realize what muscles are needed. In this next video, we will see the coach using an active coaching style. The coach is teaching the player by actually moving their body parts into position. There are various ways that sounds are used to guide a player as they run the bases. We will speak about the use of paddles at second and third base. In general, hitting the paddles together will assist the base runner to make his or her way to second base after passing first base. The paddles should be hit together at the appropriate rhythmic interval in a way that can guide the base runner. The rhythm of the paddle sound should increase and correspond to how close the base runner is to their objective base, and usually corresponds to when a base runner is 4 to 6 meters away from the base.
Quando il corridore sarà arrivato a una distanza di 4-6 metri dalla base, dipende dalla velocità della corsa, dopo un battito isolato molto forte il ritmo dovrà accelerare sempre di più, abbassando nel contempo le palette sopra il cuscino.
In this video, there are examples of two assistants who beat the paddles together. After an initial warm-up phase, have the players run 30-meter long distances and increase their speed as they go. Refer to the subsequent slides for more information. This all contributes to a player becoming more comfortable with the sounds that will guide them on the base paths. The first time a player runs should be relatively slow and controlled, while the last time should be very fast.
Sulla linea di foul del campo a destra o a sinistra, e gli assistenti alle palette 2 verso l'esterno centro.
When attempting to run the bases for the first time, an assistant or a more experienced teammate could assist the player with an active coaching approach.
Prima a passo ed eventualmente nei casi più difficili con l'accompagnamento di un altro giocatore già esperto oppure di
Eventually, as the player is more comfortable with running the bases, this speed can be increased.
Diagramma 1. I corridori sosterranno sotto
In this first diagram, you will see the base runner start at the bottom left of the assistant who's hitting the paddles and use these sounds to guide them in a direction towards the assistant at the top of the diagram.
provvederà a guidarle battendo le palette.
Once a base runner reaches this second assistant, they will be repositioned as they have completed the first part of the drill.
Parti indietro a destra in attesa dei compagni in arrivo.
When all runners have completed the first part of the drill, they will continue the drill and assume the direction of the first assistant, who had guided them from the start.
Per essere ripetuto 3 o 4.
This can be repeated 3 or 4 times.
Diagramma 2.
Diagram 2 is a progression of the previous drill.
Di quello precedente, in quanto i corridori indirizzati con la stessa modalità
The base runner will again begin with the help of the first assistant and make his way towards assistant 2.
palette 2 dovranno
They must run around the left of the assistant who's guiding them with their paddles and within the same turn make their way towards their original position, now listening to the first assistant again.
passaggio in
This reflects the route needed to take around first base.
in partita. Anche
This exercise can also be repeated as necessary.
dell'allenatore. Si consiglia che la distanza fra i due assistenti alle palette sia la stessa che quella tra le due basi, circa 28 metri.
It is suggested that the distance between the coaches should be relative to the distance needed to travel on the actual field of play. Here is an example in diagram 1. This second video is what was previously seen from diagram 2. The technical aspect of coaching base running can be broken into 3 parts: running from home to second base, running from second to third base, and running from third to home plate. The first 2 examples include a base runner arriving at a flat base that needs to be touched.
Essere toccato.
The third case includes a base runner simply passing the line representing the area at home plate. This is an example of a base running route from home to second.
Piazzato per battere,
A batter runner will hear the sounds of first base.
provvederà pertanto
A left-handed hitter will hear the first base sound from their right ear.
a fare col corpo dalla posizione di fine sventolata per puntare
It is encouraged that the batter runner stays aware of the texture of grass under the right foot as they make their way towards first base.
il segnale sonoro della prima
If they feel grass under the left foot, they should know that they're not in the ideal direction running towards first base and will need to move to the left.
battuta inizierà la corsa. Dovrà
The batter runner will have to train to develop the necessary movements that are needed to take when rounding first base and creating a new directional path as a straight line to second. After rounding first base, the right foot should be used to establish the path to second.
corretto il battitore corridore
It is encouraged to take a wider turn to the right of first base in order to help establish the path to second base.
verso la seconda.
He or she will be able to use the sound of the paddles as a guide, the first time being once they've passed first base.
In quel momento il battitore corridore girerà a sinistra, torcendo contemporaneamente il busto a destra per contenere la sbandata.
This distance equates to approximately 20 paces. Here is an example of a route from second to third base.
Sarà a contatto con la seconda base piatta con cui
The base runner may depart only after having made contact with second base. They will follow the sound of the assistant at third base, who's using the paddles in proportion to the distance the runners from the base. Similar suggestions are encouraged to be applied as previously stated. Here is an example of a base runner advancing from third base to home. The base runner needs to start with maintaining contact with third base, which was previously arrived at. The umpire is positioned behind home plate. The base runner needs to run within this designated area at home plate, but does not need to touch home plate itself. The base runner needs to run on the outside of the third base line and should be able to use the grass in foul territory as a guide. As the home plate umpire makes their call as safe or out, the base runner will be able to slow their running speed and should be aware of how much space he or she now has before running off the field. If the umpire calls stop, the runner should follow this indication. The batter runner will run their first route towards second base. The assistant at second base will help them arrive safely. In a case where their base is loaded, runners must follow the guide of the assistants who will be helping them in their base running decision making. A runner running behind you will of course force you to the next base. Every runner must rely on his assistant, who will first call a ball hit as fair or foul, and then must be able to distinguish three different sounds. If advancing to third base, the sound of the electronic box at first base, the sound of the paddles at second base, and then the sound of the paddles at third base. A base runner may advance to the next base if the throw to the second baseman misses its mark. The base runner will be helped to get back up if they slid, and then physically guided by the assistant towards third base. The route from second to third would be then assisted by the paddle sounds of the assistant at third base. If the runner intends to advance all the way home, they'll need to orient themselves with the help of the third base assistant to establish the new path along the third base line towards home plate. This video demonstrates an example of advancing from second to home. A base runner will run towards the sound made by the paddles. This is heard from 4 to 6 meters of distance away from the base. They can arrive at the base by slowing down and feeling for the sensation of the base under their feet. This can be done standing up, sliding with their feet, or sliding head first. It is highly encouraged to practice this skill before it's performed in a game. There are many ways to practice this skill, and they include having players practice sliding on a slip and slide type of material, or simply building the movements by lying on cardboard mats. The feet first slide. Have the player sit on a wet mat or folded cardboard mat, with the right or left leg under the body and the hands in the air. After a small running start, have the player slide onto this material and practice folding their legs in a way that will not cause injury. Gradually increase the distances so that a player can build the confidence to perform this slide. The head first slide. Put the player on their knees in front of the material chosen as previously stated. Have them extend their arms in a kind of slide and touch this cardboard or plastic material. The runner will perform this movement starting from an upright position. Have the player build confidence by gradually increasing the distance before the slide's made and using only one leg to initiate that first pushing off the ground movement. Here you will see a video that demonstrates how to teach these techniques. The player is building familiarity with this movement in a way to keep them from getting hurt. The coach will have the player sit with legs folded under the torso and hands above the head. Here you will see an example. The runner can start with a running start and then slide on the wet mat with his legs folded. The coach can gradually increase the distance. Here is an example of this type of slide in a game. It should be performed only after the player builds confidence doing this in a game. In this video, we see an example of the head first slide. You can start by yelling, "Down!" and then instructing the correct mechanics needed. You can see that the player slides with the push from one leg only. Here is an example of a head-first slide on folded cardboard boxes. The player is trying this for the first time in their life. This demonstrates that any person, despite their disability, can achieve their goals. Here's another example of a head-first slide. This would be the progression after sliding on a cardboard mat, which would be a more controlled environment. This is actually being done in a gym with a running start without much assistance. This video is an example of a good head-first slide in a game. The player should practice this until they're confident with this movement before doing it in a game. Remember, safety always comes first. Before I conclude, I want to quote Alfredo Melli. "The game has grown with the players, and because of them, thanks to their unexpected ability and courage to throw themselves in the dark. Only they know what they can do. The lesson that we were not looking for and that they gave us without imposing is that they bypass this specific handicap and no longer need anything." Thank you for your attention during this presentation.